Only 5,000 jammed the Groton, Connecticut shipyards for the launching of the Triton, America's 8th nuclear submarine, the first with more than one atomic engine and the largest, almost the size of a light cruiser. Triton is christened by the wife of Vice Admiral John M. Will. 447 feet long, she will displace some 8,000 tons submerged. Triton's armament, not torpedoes or missiles, but 3 decks crammed with electronic gear and new far-ranging radar. Twin nuclear engines will enable her to cruise for 2 years without refueling. More than just a radar picket and a combat command ship. Triton foreshadows the undersea's capital ship of the future, a major event in naval history.
All righty, I'm going to give the podium to Bob Larson, who, without Bob, actually, this whole thing started, it was Bob's idea. Why don't we bring a submarine down here? We're going, what? What? We all thought, oh, well, you know, let's make him happy, and we'll go over to Bremerton and look at one of the ones, the sail parks they have over there. We got over there, and Roger was part of it, too. Roger, we all, oh, Bob. We went over to Bremerton. It was just amazing, the history and the stuff that we saw. And so we really, really appreciate Bob pushing us to do this, because I think this is a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful thing that we've had it done. So, Bob, thank you.
I don't have to worry about the microphone, I guess, here. I want to welcome you all to the dedication, and we're really pleased that there's so many veterans here, and we hope that you enjoy the ceremony. The sail behind me, as you know, is the Triton sail. It's 66 feet long, and it's 24 feet high and 12 feet wide, and we believe it is the largest sail on any nuclear submarine. I keep asking people that, and they think, well, we think so. So, but this is the what the Navy came in 2 years ago and cut the sail off the USS Triton, and sandblasted it and cleaned it up and cut it into 6 pieces, and so that we could truck it over the mountains. And gave us a sail, and then when you talk to them, well, it's a loan forever, but we call it, well, they gave it to us, so, because we put it in concrete, so I don't think they're going to be taking it back. Well, we want to thank the Navy for giving us a sail and doing a lot of work to get the sail ready to come over here. And I also want to thank Bill Lampton and his crew. I don't think they're here. I told Bill I was going to talk about him, and he says, oh, I'm not coming, and he did. But I want to thank him, because what he did, he took each piece, and you can imagine there's 6 pieces in that sail, which is 66 feet long. They cut it, and they picked up each piece and trucked it back, and did 6 trips over here. Then he brought it to this area and hung it up on the cranes that you see over there, and welded it back together again. And now it's a Triton sail again. Before, it didn't look too good. And that was the beginning of the park, and Bill Lampson, for his effort, I want to thank him for starting the park here. It took a while, but we got that going. I want to, as you know, the USS Triton is a historical submarine, and the reason why it's historical, as you know, is that it went around the world submerged. The first one, which is magnificent that we get to sail. And the captain of the Triton wrote a book about that voyage, and it's called Around the World Submerged. And the captain, as you know, is Edwin L. Beach, Edward L. Beach. So he wrote the book about the voyage, and I sent this down to my brother in Santa Fe, who's an artist and supposedly a poet, and I asked him to write a poem about it, and he did, and it came back, and it was about the voyage taken from the book. And I think it's really good, but he's my brother, and it's too long for me to read to you. But what I've done is I've taken a very short, my wife says, well, you can't read that to him, it's too long. So I've taken a very short abstract of this poem, and I'm going to, and what it does is kind of tell you some of the events during the cruise, and particularly if you haven't read the book. And so we've got we've got a author of the book who is Navy, and we got an author of a poem who is Navy, and we got the reader who is Army. So I appreciate it when I mispronounce the words that you'll be kind to another service. Okay, this is a short abstract, and it is short. You'll wonder, but it is short. It's called Around the World Submerged. In February 1960, the USS Triton moved down the Thames River to track the Magellan course around the world submerged. The crew, 16 officers, 34 petty officers, and 125 enlisted men. On day 9, they arrived at St. Peter, St. Paul rocks off the Atlantic Ridge. Here, 440 years ago, Magellan was anchored with his 5 ships. Here, the Triton would begin and complete her voyage around the world submerged. 100 miles off the Uruguay, the first crisis, a very sick chief radar man, Poole, was transferred to the cruiser USS Macon. This occurred with the Triton completely submerged, but with 5 feet of her sail exposed. Day 20, second crisis, the western run to Easter Island, a packing gland around the starboard shaft began to leak. A prop shut down, ascended to shallow water. Clarence Hathaway discovered a misaligned water seal. Emergency clamps enabled the mission to continue. Third crisis, externally mounted photometer fails. Crews threatened. Sonar provides reliability to substitute in detecting shallow water, a port, ahead, and starboard. And those 3 lines down the front are the sonar equipment that was being experimented with at the time. Day 26, Guam, 700 miles away. It took Magellan 3 months to get to Guam. It will take Captain Beach 2 weeks. Day 41, here the ship's steward Edward Caballero, childhood home, and he was able to see the house where he was born through the Titan's periscope. Day 45, Philippines. Triton arrives at Magellan Bay. Here Magellan achieved his objective. He has reached the Spice Islands by sailing west from Spain. Captain Beach makes a periscope survey of the monument marking the spot where Magellan died. Day 61, Triton rounds the Cape of Good Hope, heading for the finish line. Day 69, mission complete, the rock, St. Peter and St. Paul sighted. To the U.S. Triton, well done and welcome home. Well, that's the abstract. Okay, we're going, just to mention, if you, the USS Triton covered 26,723 nautical miles in 60 days submerged, and the average speed was 18 knots. After this historical voyage, the Navy pridefully and respectfully dedicated the voyage to the people of the United States. As a lasting tribute to her men, the sail was cut away and it now rests peacefully in the park. The Port of Benton pridefully and respectfully dedicates the U.S. Triton Sail Park to our armed forces and especially to the sailors in the submarine service.
Bob, thanks a lot. Great job. The next, Marv Kinney. Mr. Beach passed away, I don't know how, Captain Beach, a few years back or something, but his wife is still alive and sent us a letter to read, and I think Marv's going to talk a little bit about that and read the letter for you. So, Marv?
Yeah, we talked to her on the phone, and we tried to have her come, and she just kind of frail and said she'll come some other time. But she wanted me to read this today. My husband, Ned Beach, would be so proud to know the Triton sail is going to find a home in your beautiful park. It will be a permanent reminder of the Triton's fabulous circumnavigation of the globe in 1960. Someday, I hope to visit this site. At this moment, I send my warmest congratulations to those lucky enough to be present. Best regards, Ingram Beach. And then I wanted to say a couple things. I'd like to, I know Bill Lamson, you're here, right? Yeah. I wanted to thank you. This wouldn't have happened without Lamson's support and work. They were just fabulous. And I also want to thank some of the guys that actually worked on it. Randy Stemp, Tim Goforth, Wayne McGee, and Mike Evanson. And then some of the partnerships to do this, we had to have other agencies involved. The Puget Sound Naval Shipyard was a great source for us and really helped out. And Tony Corso, are you here, Tony? No, didn't make it, okay. And we had Rick Schoenberg and Dave Hemry. I know they're not here. Actually, also, we had another partner, and you're probably going to question why we have this down, but the Environmental Protection Agency, we had to get, I know, we had to get some permits, and we had to get a three-way partnership contract between the Navy, the port, and EPA. It took forever, but they actually did help us out and get it done. Also, I'd like to, if you saw the people with the flags around on the back, that's a group called the ACES. They're American Citizens for Encouragement and Support of Our Troops. I'd like to thank them for coming out today. And that's about all I have, Stuff.
Thanks, Marvelous. All righty, thanks, Marv. Next, why don't we get Brad Hansen? Why don't you come up here, and I'm sure Doc has some great words. Thanks, Brad.
So I'm a poor substitute for Doc Hastings, but he's sent a letter since he's busy with work elsewhere. Dear Captain Rollins, Master Chief Petty Officer Weston, Commissioners of the Port of Benton, former crew members of the USS Triton, and friends. Thank you for inviting me to attend the grand opening of the USS Triton Sail Park. Although I'm unable to join you, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate all of you on this historic occasion. As the first marine vessel to circumnavigate the globe underwater, and the only U.S. submarine with dual nuclear reactors, the Triton is a distinguished part of our nation's military history. The New York Times stated that on her maiden voyage, the Triton's submerged circumnavigation was truly a triumph of human prowess and engineering skill, a feat which the U.S. Navy can rank as one of its bright victories. And to properly commemorate that triumph, I would at this point like to take the time to personally thank those individuals who are with us today who served aboard the USS Triton. If you could please stand. We owe you a debt of gratitude for your service and dedication to our country. I would also like to take a moment to remember those individuals who served on the Triton and were not able to be with us today. Their service will always be remembered with honor and respect. And finally, I'd like to thank the Port of Benton for their tireless efforts in bringing the Triton sail to Richland. While you continue to look out for the health of your citizens by fostering a strong business community, you also focus on their well-being by providing them a piece of history where they can walk, play, and learn. Thank you again for allowing me to share my remarks, and I wish you all the very best.
Thanks, Brad. Next, we have Larry Haler, 8th Legislative District. Larry?
Thank you. I'm not accustomed to speaking very loud, so hopefully I'll be able to you can hear me. First of all, I'd like to thank Bill Lamson and all of those, and Marv Kinney and all of those who were involved in bringing this, the Triton sail here to this community. The motto of the Triton was Noli Secundus. I believe that should be the motto of the Tri-Cities. We are second to none. I think all of you who are not familiar with this community and who are here today just to honor the Triton coming from various parts of the country should know that this community bands together on everything that we do. We're a very strong community. We have outpaced all the other communities in this state when it came to the current recession that we're going through. So welcome to our community, and I believe that we should adopt that motto that we are second to none. And it's great to be an American today, too. The ship was so large, so long, and so tall that due to her length, they had to cut away part of the bow when they were building it, so that the trains could pass through the shipyard to give supplies to other ships at Groton. When they sailed the ship the first time, they had to cut off 12 feet of her sail to get her underneath the bridge and out to sea. So that tells you how large this ship was. It was the second submarine to be named the Triton. The first Triton was lost at sea in World War II, I believe, in the Pacific Ocean. This ship cost, or this boat cost, $109 million to build. That was excluding the reactors and the fuel. So this is a great honor to be able to speak to you and to help dedicate this great ship and the sail that represents her. And all of us were up here talking back and forth, asking, are the reactors out at for the Triton out at the Hanford site? I believe that they are, and I know I've seen them out there when I've given Hanford tours. And so I think it's fitting and proper that we do have the sail here because we do have an awful lot of ex-submariners here. And again, thank you so very much for being here today, and thank you, Marv Kinney and Bill Lamson and all who were involved in this. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry that there is speakers now because I have to control my enthusiasm. Hello, Tri-Cities! Welcome all those visitors here. We're glad you're here today for this momentous occasion. I am super excited. You know, when I was reading about the Triton and why it's here, one of the reasons the Triton is here is to honor the port's partnership with the Navy in burying the reactor compartments from the nuclear submarines in Hanford. And number two, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll just follow along with me here, if you are here and you have ever served in our armed forces in any other branch besides the Navy, would you please stand or raise your hand? If you are here and you have ever served in the United States Navy but not served on a submarine, would you please either stand or raise your hand? And now, ladies and gentlemen, the number one reason why we're here today. As a lieutenant colonel in the Army National Guard, I'm going to resist my temptation, which I usually use to go hooah, go Army beat Navy at this point. And I'm going to ask, if you have ever served in the United States Navy on any submarine vessel, would you please either raise your hand or stand at this time? Ladies and gentlemen, to you we are eternally and sincerely grateful. Because of your service to this country, we enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy today. And as General Mattis said when he was here just commander of CENTCOM, he was here just a couple weeks ago and spoke in the Tri-Cities, he said, America on its worst day, the United States of America on its worst day is better than any other nation in this world because of you. God bless you, veterans. God bless your families and your loved ones. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know why they need three politicians from the same district here. I think we can always count on Brad's enthusiasm, and Larry's doing his research, so I don't have a lot to say. That's good for you all. But it is great to see this sail parked right here, put here as a memorial, because the sub-reactors come just down below the hill here. And I think it's a fitting, with our ties to the nuclear industry, the nuclear Navy, I think it's fitting that this be here. I don't know if there's another sail in the country that has a monument for it, but I think this is great. And I thank all the people that were instrumental in putting this together. You've heard the names. And again, thank all the veterans for coming here. I served in the Army. I just rode around in a military police car, we never had any sailors to arrest or apprehend. It was just all Army, but I appreciate everyone that has served in the service. I think it's makes our country great. So thanks for having us here, and thanks for you coming. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerome. Okay, next. Robert Rollins, USS Triton crew, 3rd Commanding Officer, retired U.S. Navy.
Distinguished visitors, ladies and gentlemen, veterans and shipmates. I'm delighted to be here. I've spent a number of hours standing on the bridge of that sail. I'm glad that it's preserved for everyone to come and see for the future. Triton was actually built, designed about 16 years after her time. She was designed as a radar picket ship with the idea that she could submerge, she could spot aircraft coming in, and when they flew over, she could submerge and then come back up and do her radar picket duties. She really would have been great when the Battle of Okinawa was taking place. The Japanese were angry at the Navy invaded Okinawa. They sent hundreds of aircraft down to fight our ships, to defend the island. They weren't very successful, but they sure killed a lot of ships, and they played hell with the radar picket destroyers that were in place. So the idea was if you had a submarine out there, they could submerge, let the aircraft go over, and then surface after the aircraft went by. The idea was flawed. It never worked out. But Admiral Rickover got his twin reactor submarine, so that worked out pretty well for the Navy. But we're here to talk about the sail. In the 1960s, when I had command, the Atlantic Fleet used to go down to the Caribbean area for training. The Caribbean Sea was a lot more benign, a lot calmer than the often angry North Atlantic. And one February, Triton was down there rendering services to another submarine. We were acting as target for them. We got a message that said, surface immediately and report into base, which we did. We were told that a civilian aircraft had gone down during the night about 50 miles or so from our location where we were training, and go look for the sailor, or go look for the people who were on that aircraft. So we took off at best speed. When we got to the datum point being the location where we were told they had the plane had gone down, there was nothing there, of course. This was a small aircraft flying from somewhere to Puerto Rico. The pilots probably didn't know within 50 miles where he was at any particular time. So the standard procedure then was to start a box search. You'd start at the datum point and then do a big box looking for the downed aviators. Now, with that huge sail, that tall sail, we had really a big advantage over other submarines or other ships that were searching, because our height of eye gave us we could see miles to the horizon. And with the periscopes raised, we could see even further. So we started out, made our big first, completed the box, then headed south to expand the box, search a larger area, when one of our lookouts said, I see something over in the port bow. We headed in that direction, and pretty soon we saw a rubber raft floating in the waves. As we got close, we saw two people in the raft. When we got close aboard, we threw them a line. Unfortunately, they had been cold and wet. They were pretty much out of it. In fact, I think they were in the early stages of hypothermia. Hypothermia being when the body temperature gets down to a certain point, you lose consciousness and die. It's sort of like today, you know. But we put a swimmer in the water. He went over, attached the line of the raft. We pulled him close aboard, brought the two men aboard, took him down below, gave him a shot of whiskey and a cup of coffee, threw him in a bunk, covered him with blankets. When we got back to port, Roosevelt Roads was our port at the time. They appeared topside in much better shape than we had found them. They got into, an ambulance is waiting on the pier. They loaded them in the ambulance and took off. We never saw or heard from them again, but we know they survived. And that was another successful rescue at sea by a ship of your Navy. And good for us. Yeah. Your next speaker is going to be is listed on the program as chief of the boat. For the non-submariners who are here, let me explain what the chief of the boat is. He's generally known by an acronym COB, chief of the boat, C-O-B, COB. He's the COB is the right-hand man of the executive officer, who is second in command. And the primary purpose of the COB is to make sure that the small problems which inevitably occur on the submarine don't become big problems that the CO or the XO have to solve. A good COB is worth his weight in diamonds. And Harold Weston was a good COB. Master Chief, you're up.
I shake not out of fear. I shake because I'm from Virginia Beach, and it's a lot warmer there than here. Distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, fellow shipmates. This sail and conning tower is special to me because this is the place where I earned my dolphins, the silver dolphins of the submarine of the United States Navy. I'm going to speak on the sail as the captain did, but from a perspective of one of my leading seamen here, who became a warrant officer later on, Ed Bruette. We had many times and did a lot of things here, loading torpedoes and whatever it took to get this boat, pardon me, the state of Washington has got me. There are many sea stories that could be told about Triton, but one that I would like to share with you today is about the sail that has been placed here in Port Benton to recognize the feats of the first submarine that circumnavigated the Earth submerged. On this trip, there was a strange hum from this big sail that no one could find, and friend or foe could recognize, here comes the Triton, okay? And it occurred whenever we reached the 20-knot mark, which is about 24 miles an hour. And of course, this is when you were submerged. And it became known to the crew as the 20-knot hum. I don't care whether you were sleeping, eating, or whatever. When the captain ordered 20 knots or 24 knots or whatever, this sail started to hum. And I know there's no aborigines here, but it sounded like a didgeridoo. And let me demonstrate it for you. So here we come. About 6 years later, we were transferred to Norfolk, Virginia, and my leading seaman over here, we were rigging to recover a Mark 37 torpedo that we were going to fire at one of our friends, the USS Seal, the old fleet boat, to hone our abilities to hunt down other submarines and possibly sink them, hopefully not, but we were prepared. So this Mark 37 torpedo, we had rigged a frame up here and to attach onto the torpedo, and of course after we fired it we surfaced, and the sea owl surfaced, and we hunted for the torpedo, and we found it. And then we put Jim Grilly, our swimmer, into the water, attached the bridle, attached it to the yoke that we had up there, and we started bringing it in. And when we did, for some reason or another, and once we attached to it, Jim was coming up out of the sea, out of the sea, and he was climbing a Jacob's ladder just in front of the sail here. And we changed direction, and we got in a roll there in the ocean, and off took the torpedo. that way. But when we rolled back that way, here comes that torpedo. And Jim was fighting all he could go. He was really moving. He had his swim fins on and so forth. He made it. And the torpedo slapped into the side of the submarine, but we saved the torpedo and put it down below thanks to the leading seaman here. We had this hum that we tried to find, and it took about 6 years, as I was saying, in Norfolk, Virginia, with Ed Bruette topside with all of our seamen, and we were getting ready for this torpedo retrieval, and we were looking at the sail. And you see the rail around the bottom of the sail? As we were talking, we said, the pipe's open on the end. Everybody knows a bugle. If you in the end of it, music's going to come out the other end, right? Well, as we were going through the water with the Triton, that water passing through the sail while you were submerged gave you that 20-knot hum, okay? We solved it. And then we had a ship alt that the captain didn't know about. We was going to try, and so we plugged the end of that tube right there. And you know, from then on, when we dove, I don't care what speed we were going, no more hum, okay? So then I'm, in my notes here, I got, so then we became a true members of our brothers over here, the silent service. They couldn't hear us coming. Ladies and gentlemen, we the officers and crew of the USS Triton SSN 586, thank you for your efforts that you've done here at Fort Benton and keeping the spirit of Triton alive as well as its crew. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you.
That's awesome. Good job. Yep.
I got all enthused here. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Al Steele. He's a crew member of the Triton, and this man is not going to tell you, but we had a casualty in the after torpedo room while we were on the round world trip. Commander Steele, being a young seaman at the time, he dove into the bilge and there was fog, oil fog everywhere, which could have been a very dangerous situation. He saved us. He saved the boat. He saved the bacon. I would like to introduce Commander Al Steele, retired United States Navy.
And you're right. You know, these uniforms do shrink sitting in the closet. I noticed that. Why don't we make you ladies their honorary Triton crew members and have a seat. Good morning. I thought it might be useful to hear about Triton's first dive. It was pretty interesting, and that was the first time this giant sail got wet with seawater. We went to sea on the 26th of September, 1959, and the seas were calm. It was a nice day, so we were pretty excited to go, as you might imagine. I was a young seaman at the time. I was pretty much at the bottom of the food chain. But I'd been assigned as the battle station stern plainsman, which meant that I was going to make the first dive. And in reality, there are other people involved too. The chief of the watch opening the vents and the bow plainsman doing his job. And of course, the diving officer. Now, the first dive of a submarine coming out of shipyard or new construction is a pretty controlled event for obvious reasons. You get the crew off the top of the sail, and my position was up on the port lookout at the time. You get the officer of the deck down, you button up the ship, shut all the hatches, check all the openings shut. You get the diving team on station, and then you bleed air pressure into the boat to make sure there are no leaks, and you watch the altimeter. Well, so far, this was all going well. And then the chief of the watch starts cycling the vents. You open them a few seconds, shut them, opening, few seconds shut. And about the third time you do that, the ship starts to go under. So we proceeded down to periscope depth, stopped, checked for leaks. There were no leaks, so we continued on down, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. You get the idea. We were checking at each point, and there were no leaks. Now, once we got to as far down as we could go, because we were in water that was roughly 600 feet, as I recall, we got down there, and then we were free to operate. So we were like a teenager with a new car. I mean, we were all ahead full, all ahead flank, right full rudder, left full rudder, 20 degrees up, 20 degrees down, and we were having a ball. The Triton performed just wonderfully. None of us had ever served on a ship this size, with this much speed, this much power. And it was a pretty exciting time, and I can tell you that we all had smiles on our face. We operated for a few hours, and then we had to do one more event, and that was backing the ship submerged. Now, backing submerged on a submarine can be a little tricky because they're really not designed to do that, but you can do it. Well, we had all done it on a submarine that was 307 feet long, but no one had ever tried this on a submarine 457 feet long. So we had something to learn. The diving officer rang up, all stop. We watched the speed indicator come to 0. When it gets to 0, the bow plainsman and the stern plainsman change their roles. And you can think about that, because now you're going backwards, you're changing your mission. We did that, and we did pretty well for a while. But then the submarine started doing some funny things. First, the stern would come out, then the bow would come up, then the stern would go down, and we began acting like a seesaw. And so we kept trying to catch it, back and forth. Well, pretty soon, it was clear that we didn't have a good handle on this, and the XO was reading off the depths from the fathometer, which was right behind my left shoulder, and he says, 400 feet to the bottom. That didn't sound good. And then 300 feet to the bottom. Now, we're trying to do all kinds of things. And at about 300 feet, the diving officer said, I don't like this. I think we better go ahead. So he rang up a head bell. We kept descending. At 200 feet, the order was given, blow the ballast tanks. We're truly out of control at this point. So at 200 feet, they started blowing the ballast tanks. They blew them for a few seconds and then stopped. And our descent slowed, but it didn't stop. Now at this point, I've got both of my feet up on the diving panel. I'm pulling back on the stick as hard as I can, and I'm convinced that when we hit the bottom, I'm going to go rocketing through the diving panel at this point. And so I'm ready for it. Well, the XO says 100 feet. At this point, the captain said, blow it again. Keep blowing, just keep blowing the ballast tanks. We slowed down, and our descent was just about stopped, but not quite. The XO said 40 feet. 40 feet doesn't sound good. I've got back on the stick. We're getting a little headway on now, so now the planes are beginning to have a little effect. If you think about an airplane going down like this and coming up, but our concern was we were rapidly running out of water. So as we steadied out, I heard him say 40 feet and then 20 feet. Ned Beach, Captain Beach, leaned over the diving stand, over the diving team, and said to me, okay, Steele, bring us up flat. So now we were concentrating on keeping the ship level, because if you don't bring us up flat, you're going to drag the stern in the mud. And so the bow plainsman and I concentrated real hard on just keeping the ship level. And since we had a lot of air in the ballast tanks, we let the air do its work, and it began to lift us. As it lifted us up, as we got further from the bottom, and let me say, at the lowest most point, I remember words that no submarine ever wants to hear. No sounding. The XO said, no sounding. And let me tell you, you're pretty close to the bottom when you can't get a sounding. I'm guessing 10 or 12 feet, because there are limitations for the fathometer. As we came up, now we could put a little up angle on the ship, and we began to plane our way up. On the way up, the captain said, well, we're going the right direction. Let's just keep going to the surface. So as we got up to about 150 feet, they sounded the surface alarm, and we proceeded up to periscope depth. But at this point, we suddenly realized we were pretty much out of air, because we used all the air down there keeping the ship from running into the mud. And so now we had to figure out how to get back on the surface. But for the Triton, because it had so much power and speed, we just planed it up to the surface, used the planes to hold us on position, on the surface, and then we could open up the snorkel and open up a hatch and get some air in, take atmospheric air, low pressure, put that in the ballast tanks, and then we came right on up to the surface. Well, we got on the surface, and then we dashed up to the top, back to our positions, as much as you can dash on this sail. And we got up there, and I thought, boy, this fresh air really feels good. About that time, about 2 minutes later, Admiral Rickover popped up through the hatch. And many of you may know this, but Admiral Rickover always made it a point to ride nuclear submarine on its first time at sea. So he was on board. He pops up through the hatch. Right behind him comes a captain. And Admiral Rickover exclaims, sea trials have really gone well today. He says, why don't we head on in? And I'm thinking, I don't know where you were, Admiral, but in the control room, things were pretty exciting. Yeah. But so ended the first and maybe the most memorable dive of the Triton. I don't know, but it was an exciting time for all of us, and we learned an awful lot. In closing, I'd like to say I'd like to thank everybody for what they've done for Triton and to keep the memory alive. As I was telling the Master Chief here, this was my home for 3 years. And when I say home, it was really my home because I didn't have a house, car. Well, I had a whole car, but I didn't have a condo, apartment. I didn't have anything except a ship. So this was home. Okay, that's it for me. So thank you very much for inviting me.
That was great. Thank you very much. I think we ought to give one last hand for all our veterans out here. I mean, because that's what it's all about.
USS Triton, the world's largest nuclear submarine, surfaces off the Delaware coast at the end of 84 days of undersea cruising that carried it around the world. A helicopter hauls Captain Edward L. Beach aloft for a quick hop to the White House and ceremonies marking the historic accomplishment. Captain Beach, who skippered the Triton on a course matching that of Ferdinand Magellan in the first round-the-world voyage in 1519, receives the Legion of Merit with a presidential citation. To Captain Beach also goes the distinction of commanding perhaps the most spectacular shakedown cruise in Navy annals. Triton returns to its home berth in New London to be greeted with civic rejoicing and jubilant wives and families of the 183 officers and men whose mission had been top secret until just hours before. After 84 days, welcomes home are warm indeed. They made naval history on Operation Magellan, but gosh, it's good to be back.